Welcome back everybody. This week's been pretty exciting because I've been working on the blunt transfer over the spine. Okay, the blunt transfer over the spine. Let's see what we're talking about. Approach the ramp with a nice bit of speed, pump up onto the coping, lift that front leg and get the back wheels over the coping, lock into that blunt, and then keep the momentum going over the spine. The last bit is just simply a drop in, trying to keep the feet on the board. Now I've always wanted to do this one and I've offered it up a fair few times, but it always felt too scary to commit to locking into that blunt on the top of the spine and then going over the top. So to steady the ship, I learnt a version where I was holding on to the nose, and I found that just gave me a little bit more stability, and it also meant that when it all went wrong, I could throw that board out the way and run down the other side. Going for it with no grab just feels to me like you're in no man's land, throwing it up there willy-nilly, and it just seemed like there would be a variety of bails, all of which could be emotional. I entered into a bit of routine spine trick maintenance the other day on my favourite spine at Concrete Wave Skate Park. All of my usual tricks were feeling pretty comfortable. My special bar was up, so I thought it was a good time to give the blunt transfer a go. So regular viewers will know it usually takes me an eternity to land a new trick. I was quite surprised with this one because I managed to get it after about 3 or 4 tries. I had my full pad set on so I could really commit to it, and I found that there were a couple of bails that cropped up in the early stages. The first one was not going far enough and ending up in a sort of rock on the top of the spine. And I found getting out of that one was no problem, just kick the board away and run down the transition. The second one was coming up a little bit short and just getting the one wheel over into a sort of pivot. And again, that wasn't the end of the world, and it did sow the seeds of possibility for a pivot over the spine. The one I was most worried about was going too far and the tail missing the spine and sort of flying off the back. And I think my natural instinct was to lean back, and that was the wrong thing to do because it didn't commit my body weight going over the spine. So for the ones I made, I really found I needed to commit my body weight over the top of the spine. And to get those back wheels to go up over the spine and hook over the top, I found a little snap of front knee bend, managed to get the board up there and pivot on. Once my weight was going forwards across the ramp, it was just a case of holding my nerve, not jumping off, and then just doing a drop in. For my second session, I was at St Ives Skate Park. I was trying my hand at the loop. There'll be a future video on my progress doing the loop. I'd have to say it's pretty emotional. And to warm down, I decided to test my skills on the St Ives spine. Now this is slightly smaller. It's not part of a spine ramp, it's just part of the mini ramp, and the spine is at the end and then it just trickles out into the rest of the skate park. But it's a little bit more manageable than the Concrete Wave spine, so I decided to up the ante by taking my pads off and seeing if I could get that blunt over the spine with no grab. To warm up and to get a feel for the spine and the transition, I just did a couple of my go-to spine tricks, and then it was into the attempts for the blunt over the spine. Okay, just not having the pads on and being on a spine that I wasn't so familiar with added an extra frisson of danger, and I happened upon a new bail which was getting on the top of the spine no problem and then not committing to the drop in. And I have to say that was probably the worst bail of all, because running down that transition with the board following me got a little bit of ankle bite going where the board caught up, hit me Achilles or hit me ankle. Again, I did one bail where I didn't quite go far enough and I ended up in that rock, and also one where I got up into that sort of pivot position. But after a few attempts, I managed to commit to it and managed to ride away. Okay, that's it for this video on the blunt transfer over the spine. I wish I'd tried this years ago. I don't want to jinx it, but it's a little bit easier than I thought it would be. It is scary, but I found that once I committed to it and really wanted to go over the spine and I kept my feet on the board, it worked out every single time. I also managed to get to making it pretty quickly, and I think that's because I already knew how to do the blunt over the spine with a little nose grab to steady the ship. And I think if you're new to these, it might be worth experimenting with doing the little nose grab. I have to say it's probably easier to do it without the nose grab just because it puts your body in a position where you get into the blunt really easily, but it is a little bit more scary committing to the drop in on the other side. I'd also recommend padding up for this one because when it does go wrong, there is a chance of that board biting your ankles. So being able to knee slide will probably reduce the risk of that ankle bite happening. So I think the key points to help me make this one is to approach the spine with a good amount of speed and with confidence, pump up and imagine that the back foot is going to land on the spine, and to help the wheels get over the spine, just do a little snap of front knee bend. Also, I found that I needed to imagine my head and shoulders going up over the top of the ramp, and I needed to avoid my natural instinct of wanting to lean back away from the perceived danger. I found the more I bent my legs up and the more speed I had going over the top, the easier it was to follow through with my momentum and drop in the other side. And that last bit simply is a drop in, so as long as your drop ins are secure, it's pretty much in the bag. In terms of bails, I found it all pretty manageable. The first one was not going far enough and ending up in that rock, and to get out of it I just kicked the board away and ran out. The second one was not quite going far enough and ending up in a sort of pivot position. Again, not the end of the world, and I reckon I could transform that one into a new trick for me, which is a pivot over the spine. Probably the worst one I had was getting over the top of the spine and then getting spooked on the way back in and jumping off. And the thing I had to remember was to try and steer clear of that board as it chased me down the transition and snapped at my ankles. I think it probably is possible to pump too much and miss the tail on the spine, fly over the top whilst leaning back and sort of hit your hip on the spine and go off that way. Luckily that didn't happen, but that was the one I was most mindful of not doing. Anyway, if you fancy giving this one a go careful and let me know how you get on in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, you can also hit subscribe. I make new videos every week. You can also follow me on Instagram @JohnBishopSkate. As ever, my name's been John Bishop and I'm a middle-aged guy learning how to skate.